Lowe's has more of what trade pros like you need to get the job done. That means more delivery options, more convenient hours to fit your schedule, and more savings to fit your budget. More of the brands you trust the most. More of everything you need, all in one place. That's why, in the past year, more electricians, landscapers, painters, plumbers, and other pros helped make Lowe's the new home for trade pros. U.S. only.
What's up, y'all? It's Jeff Cobb, and you're listening to Ricky and Clive Wrestling Show on Social Suplex Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Ricky and Clive Wrestling Show. Listener discretion is advised at all times.
Hello, and thank you once again for listening to the Rance and Clive Show. I'm one half of your host, Rance, aka Ray Cash, and I am here with my good friend Clive. Clive, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Rance. It's nice to be back on the show with you.
Yeah, we've been doing this show for so long, you and I, just me and you, and it's always good to be back on the show that you and I started. Just me and you.
And on January of the year of our Lord 2017.
What the year of our Lord 2017 in the beautiful homeland of Scotland, where I'm from. And this is our pet project, our baby, and nobody else has been a part of this show. Just me and you. Henceforth, the RNC. And it's good to be back again on RNC, a.k.a. Rance and Clive.
So are you going to bring us the D?
Oh, he'll give you the D. He will give you the D.
No, apparently we're going to get the D today. Yes, on the RNC show, RNC Wrestling Show, a.k.a. Rance and Clive, because there would be nothing else, just Rance and Clive. We have a special guest today. Our good friend from the Black Country, a.k.a.
Not this again.
South. Since I'm from Scotland, I clearly know where the Black Country is because I'm from Scotland, right? We have our good friend, the Podfather, and in some circles he's known as the Big Fish. We have Mr. Mags. How you doing, sir?
I'm just glad to be back on the Ray and Clive show. It's an absolute honour. I'm getting very much kind of Ric Flair versus Randy Savage storyline vibes here, where you were taking photos of a certain R and just superimposing yourself into those photos. But yeah, it's good to be back.
That reminds me, I'm contractually obligated to say Philadelphia Eagles, Bret Hart is great, and Manchester United, woo, woo, woo. I feel like I'm supposed to say that.
You're missing out. I spit in the face of those who don't want to be cool.
Yeah, well, when we do the quiz, that we started, henceforth, myself and Clive, since this is the Ray or the Rance and Clive show, your choice. I will use that as my buzzer at that point, because that's what I do. And I forgot, just in case you guys didn't know, I am a perfect 10.
See, the vibes I'm getting is Superman 3.
Well, no, but I hate superheroes, right? Of course, superheroes are stupid.
Apart from Superman 3, because what was the film I was watching where it reminded me of the pit, the digital techie Silicon Valley looking pit at the end of Superman? Do you know what? Let's just fucking move on. This is off the rails.
This has been the best episode ever so far of the Ray and Clive show that I've ever been a part of, anyway.
Out of 4 years, that's big, right? Of the Ray and Clive show. That's because that's what it's always been.
It's as if you're reading an auto cue.
What'd you say?
It's as if you're reading an auto cue.
Oh, man, look. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I'm supposed to be recording this from my phone. So let me hang up and start over. Because, I never use my laptop to record this. I always use my phone.
Oh, dear. Right. What do I do here? What do I do? So, ladies and gentlemen, the plan for tonight's show... am I going to mention his name at all tonight? Should I at least say something?
Go ahead. Yeah, we love you, other R, that may have been a part of the show at some point.
Regular guest, Rick.
Yeah.
He's the friends in Ray and Clive.
Yeah, big shout out to Rab Ropes, definitely. So, the plan for this week's episode, we're going to go ahead with this even without Rab Ropes joining us this week. We're going to do a deep dive down the careers of the Four Horsewomen in WWE, officially known as Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks and Bayley. This idea was brought to us by Rab Ropes. Sadly, he can't be with us tonight. Shout out to you. Hope you're doing well. But we're going to go ahead with it. I thought it was a good topic, and it's one of those ones that's been, 5 years main roster. A lot's happened since then, including their NXT runs as well. So we are going to go round table style, give us our top 3 matches, 3, 2, 1 in that order, from each horsewoman. And then after that, we will give our own personal rankings of who we feel are, I don't like saying worst because they're all like superlative, but least best to best.
Can I also say one more real quick? Just shouting out our good friend of the Ray and Clive show, Mubarak. Rab Ropes.
Oh, I hope he's in on the joke.
So do I.
It's a little too late for that now, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. So, guest, Darren, do you want to go first and give us your third best match from, let's go with Sasha Banks. Let's go with Sasha Banks first. We'll do her.
Okay. So, what I did is I watched about 5 matches from each of the women, just because there's a lot of overlap with my picks, especially. So my third, I'm actually gonna go with Bayley versus Sasha Banks from NXT Takeover Brooklyn. Okay. I think. Let me just get my notes up. I mean, going through the picks I've got, Bayley and Sasha Banks are so intertwined that I could have picked 3 Bayley and Sasha Banks matches and would have been absolutely happy with them. But I'm going to try and avoid, or at least kind of mix it up a little bit with Sasha Banks. This match was absolutely fantastic. Bayley gained the victory, and there's one thing from watching these matches that I realised, and it's a point that I think you're probably going to touch on when you get to some of your picks. Certain horsewomen fare better in losing matches than they do in winning matches, and I think Sasha Banks for me is someone who seems to always put on a brilliant performance when she's putting someone else over. And from going through all the matches I've watched of hers, she loses pretty much all the matches, but she puts in so much effort in making her opponent look amazing that she ends up coming out of the match looking just as good. My first pick is Sasha Banks versus Bayley from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's had all the plaudits under the world over the last few years, so I'm not surprised at all that it's on the list. And that's a good point that you bring up about Sasha doing well, putting people over. I'm still withering with the top two for that one, but I'm going to see what Rance has for his third one first before I officially confirm that. I've got some notes here, but I just want to see where everyone else lies with their third one.
So for my third one, I don't like to be a person that has recency bias, but I went back and I didn't have the time to look at all the matches like Mr. Maggs did, but I went back and I have a pretty good memory of how I feel about a match when I can go back and look at the card. And I think it would just be a shame if I didn't acknowledge how fantastic, not only groundbreaking, but just in ring, that Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair at this year's WrestleMania was. And that is my number 3. That is my first on my list of Sasha Banks. It's a fantastic story. I know a lot of us were a little disenamored with the build, but you know what? When Showtime comes, who gives a damn? It had all the pomp and circumstance of importance, being that it was the last match of the night, first time 2 black women main event at a WrestleMania, second time 2 women WrestleMania main event at WrestleMania. But the match was impeccable. The story of the old wily vet, the standard bearer, versus the new kid, the rookie. Bianca was game for everything, but as we're not just casual fans who watch every now and then. We're the idiots who pay attention to everything and know sequences and powders and all the jargon. You can watch every single point of that match, and you can see while Bianca showed up to work, Sasha, she held her hand through every single inch of that match in a beautifully leading way, to the point where she would make her hero Eddie Guerrero proud, because she worked a perfection with that match. Made Bianca look fantastic, sold like she's never sold in her life. I know she probably still got the scar on her stomach from the hair whip, but fantastic match. Even so much to the point where after the match is over and the show is over, you can see her selling her injuries outside, smiling because she knew we killed that. So I just want to give some love to that. That's my first on my list of the Sasha Banks matches. I didn't think you guys would add that because her list is so deep, and I just want to give a little love to that.
No, I had it in my group of Sasha matches, and I think it flies totally in the face of, if you remember the last WrestleMania when everybody was giving a for saying that she was acting out and throwing temper tantrums because she didn't get away. This totally goes against that. She made Bianca look like $1 million and she gave for this company. And like I said, you go through a history of matches, she builds her opponents up so well that I find it hard to believe that she was backstage kicking off about it.
It's very Dwayne Johnson-esque.
See, the common theme already emerging from this is that Sasha proverbially holds the hands of her opponents, helps them get over. And that's a reason why some of Sasha's matches I have not included, like with other horsewomen, I've not included in the list, because I see them as the other horsewomen's moments to shine. So I'll touch on the reasons for why later on. Mm-hmm. But I do definitely want to add in the Sasha and Bayley rivalry, and I'm going to go with not the Brooklyn one. I'm going to go with the Hell in a Cell match that they had just last year. The culmination of all those years, and I'll say this every time, and I'll maintain to my dying day, this was what they had planned since the very beginning. Okay, COVID and all that stuff, but this was going to go happen somewhere down the line. Sasha Banks seems to be okay. She's been in the most of, if not all of, the Hell in a Cell matches that women have been in for WWE, but she's been the common denominator, and I like to use the term common denominator when I'm talking about wrestling's strengths. And Sasha, she's synonymous with Hell in a Cell matches for me. All the ones she's been in have been absolutely fantastic. This one, I think with cells and cages and chambers, because women have a slighter frame, there's a lot more room for them to do more damage and enclosed structures. So the use of the furniture in that match was really good. The kendo sticks, superb in that, but Bayley's been superb in a lot of matches. But Sasha specifically, just the whole thing about the callback to the Brooklyn match where you had the stamping on the feet of stamping Bayley's broken hand and rolling her back, and it didn't work, but this time it did work, but it was attached to the neck or something like that, and it was such a beautiful callback that she eventually, and on one of the bigger stages, got that W back that she'd been looking for so long. It was a really special moment for Sasha. It was, as far as I'm aware, the first time she'd won that match as well. I don't know if that's...
She defended. First time she defended the championship, yes.
Yeah. So all in all, it was just stunning work from Sasha, more so than Bayley, I think, so that's why I'm adding it in Sasha's, and I put that for number 3.
Great pick. It's one that I had on my kind of short list of matches. For my second one, I'm tempted to follow Ray's lead and go with Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks, and for all the reasons that Ray said, but also adding in the fact that it was historically, it was so significant that this match was 2 African American women headlining a WrestleMania pay-per-view. The amount of pressure on those 2 women's shoulders was immense, probably more immense than it was for Becky, Charlotte and Ronda headlining the first WrestleMania, because as Ray knows, black athletes, especially in the WWE, they don't get their fair shake of the stick. And these were 2 women who had come to the very top of the mountain, and they had to perform, because if they didn't perform, this shit ain't happening again. And I think that they did perform. So I'm going to have to put that in as my second pick. And the match was outstanding. Even if that wasn't 2 African-American women, that is an outstanding match. You add that kind of historical significance, and it makes it an all-time classic for me.
It's my number 2 as well, actually, for the reasons that you've mentioned. But I think also, and this goes for all the horsewomen, maybe to an extent, a certain Ronda Rousey as well, but they helped pave the way for the likes of Bianca Belair, for women in general. Not just black women, but women in general, to headline WrestleMania nights. A lot were calling BS to a certain extent on Bianca's booking at the start of her call-up last year, but it's only been a year and she's already at the top of the mountain. She's doing a very good job. I love her earrings that she has, the SmackDown Women's Champion. They're excellent. But for all the reasons you guys have said, plus Sasha was important, played an important part in paving the way for that to happen in the first place.
There is a saying that on Earth, and that's especially in the Western world, if you will, and that's because you know the history of black people. Well, that's black men. Black women often get treated even worse by society. So your point about the history and what they had to deal with on their shoulders, Mags, is so poignant, because there's already history and there's already a level of pressure ending a show, main eventing any show. Then you add main eventing WrestleMania, and then you add main eventing the first WrestleMania back with fans after COVID. Then you add WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania back with fans after COVID, after a rain delay. Then you add all of that on top of that being women. Then you add all that on top of that being black women, and not unapologetically black women, the way they dress, the way they act, attitude, they're everything about them, the character. And they, unfortunately, in situations like that, you got to knock it out of the park. Because if that would have just been an okay match, I'd like to think we've evolved enough as society and they've evolved enough as a company to where that wouldn't have been pushed down or marginalized in a way because it didn't kill it. But we don't know. Doesn't matter, because they killed it. So hats off to them. They broke all of the barriers in that match, and I'm very honored to hear both of you guys put that on your list. And to kind of placate you guys as well, kind of give some love back, my number 2, Clive, is Sasha and Bayley Hell in a Cell. I'll give a spoiler here, but I actually don't have the Takeover match with Sasha and Bayley on my list for Sasha. I have a different number one. And I'll explain that when we get later on in this list. But I want to say that this was Sasha's opus, if you will.
Okay.
This match was more about Sasha than it was about Bayley. This match was about Sasha kind of shedding the label she had built as she could always chase and she could win the title, but she could never defend it. She could always be the top star, but she was always transitional. She was edge. She would get the title to get to a certain point and then give it to the person who deserved to hold it. This was after the greatest women's champion from a record standpoint of all time. All due respect to Moolah, we don't count that shit. That was 75,000 years ago. The run she had, the run of COVID. And your point, I'm with you, dog. You cannot tell me when they were in NXT, toiling in the Performance Center, they didn't say, we're going to end this 10 years later in a Hell in a Cell. It just felt too perfect. But the match is beautiful. There are callbacks aplenty. They reward you for being a long-time viewer. They reward you for being a person. And I think the match is enhanced because while Bayley may have bad Bayley completely changed everything and made her character so much better. And the way she played off of Sasha and Sasha coming in as the face in peril, as the baby. It's a beautiful match. And I call it Sasha's opus because while most people will show the match in Brooklyn to a new fan, I think the Hell in a Cell is the match you should show.
That's a good point.
Yeah, great point. For all the waxing lyrical that you guys have done of it, it doesn't actually make my number one spot. I'm tempted to go with Sasha versus Io Shirai from Great American Bash.
Good look.
Mainly because, again, it fits into that theme of Sasha making her opponent look so damn good in defeat, but yet still coming out looking amazing. And the way that they use the belt as like a distraction for the referee, and then involving Asuka to keep storylines going, I thought it was really well done. But it would be remiss if I didn't have the Iron Woman match from NXT TakeOver Respect as the best Sasha Banks match.
Wow.
This for me is as groundbreaking as the WrestleMania match was for African American women. This match was groundbreaking for women's wrestling in WWE. The first ever Iron Man style match for the women, and I don't think you could have picked two better wrestlers to carry that, and that's including the likes of Charlotte and the likes of Becky Lynch. These two had the storyline, obviously coming off the back of the Brooklyn match. The amount of callbacks in this, I mean, you get a callback from the Poison Rana, where Sasha has that kind of telegraphed and stands as he cry. That is character work at its very, very best. Catching when she gets caught in the belly to belly off the top rope. It's a sublime match, and I could happily watch that match multiple times in a day. It's just so well done, and the perfect finish where she gives up and loses the match with 2 seconds to go. Again, falls into that trope of Sasha making her opponents just shine. So for me, this is the number one match for Sasha Banks, and this is her magnum opus for me, the Iron Woman match.
Don't forget to add to all your list of superlatives, this is the first ever women's match to main event a pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Well, an NXT pay-per-view. Later on, I may bring up the first women's match to headline a WWE pay-per-view.
Fair enough.
See, you've got it all set. I have it all set in stone, and then we start talking, and you guys give your reasons, and it just mucks up everything that you're thinking about. Because literally, even to this day, the only time where I have shed tears for wrestling was the video package before that pay-per-view, that takeover. That hype vignette was something special. When I talk about having the match of the year, and you could see those two women almost crying in Full Sail. Them doing the training montage, running along the beach and all that. That I was so pumped for that match, and this was at the height of NXT's this shiny new toy for me. I'd only started watching it when Kevin Owens debuted, so to see these women, like, okay, their beginning started a bit before. That was a big moment, and I feel almost dirty in not including it, because it is such an important one. And so that is in my honourable mentions. And another one that I want to give an honourable mentions to is Sasha Banks and Ronda Rousey at the Royal Rumble.
Yes, that was my number 4. If I had to put it on a fourth, that would be my number 4.
And this was in a time where you could even see it written on her face. Sasha Banks was having confidence issues. Evolution, she had a stinker of a night to Evolution. It was in between that and whatever happened at that WrestleMania where they lost the tag team titles. So I believe that Bayley Banks wasn't in a great place, but she made Ronda Rousey look as if she'd been doing mat wrestling for a long, long time, not just a year or so. And I know UFC is similar, but you know what I mean, that chain wrestling style. She gave Ronda one of her best performances personally. But I have to go with the Brooklyn match as my number 1. That place, the place that holds in history, is etched in time. It's set in stone, according to a previous podcast back in the day. A certain Badlands. My opinion is written in stone.
Badlands? I've heard of that before. What was that? Oh.
It was a golf course in one of the Tiger Woods games.
Got you.
No, the Brooklyn match for me, it's one of those ones in hindsight. It could have main evented that pay-per-view, that takeover. It was so special. Bayley's journey from the month leading up to that, including the handbrake, the getting out from Emma's shadow, going through the Becky and Charlotte, and it culminating against Sasha. Snoop Dogg's entrance. It was just such a perfect tale from beginning to end, and that Poison Rana was a shocker. Something you don't really see women do at all. So to see that, and it just, we've had the superlatives for this match over and over again, so you don't need to go down that road, but safe to say that is still my favourite Sasha Banks match.
I love the story behind that match. I think they talked about it they did Untold about it, I believe. About Sasha and Bayley in general.
Did they?
And it's fantastic.
Right, okay.
There's not been an Untold that's bad yet. They're all like appointment watching. You have to watch them. But just for the purpose of this match, I love that it talked about how when they were practicing and planning out the match, they would do something crazy and be like, "Hey, they're doing that. They can't do that," because they want to do it themselves, or they didn't want to see them do that. So literally, they stopped practicing, and they just literally came up with it, like, we'll just do it on the fly in the ring. And so add that. So to know that not only was the match fantastic, given all the things that involved, but it was called on the fly. Like, that's crazy. And also, don't forget, another thing to add to it is Dusty had just passed. That's why Bayley had the polka dots.
Yeah.
So that was almost a love letter to Dusty, a thank you letter, because Dusty basically changed both of their lives by giving them their characters, or giving them the ability and the motivation to create their characters. So that's one of the 5, maybe in a, I don't know if you guys do this. Well, I'm Scottish, but I'd imagine in America there's this thing called a time capsule that they have. I feel like this match, if you had 5 matches you could watch and had to put in a time capsule to give people 1,000 years from now, this would be one of the matches you put in that list.
Definitely.
But it's not on my list.
I thought that.
At least not for Sasha. So I'm a little surprised you guys didn't have them, but listening to your explanations, I get it. But my number 1 for Sasha Banks is maybe the perfect Hell in a Cell match. and that's men or women. That's Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch.
Oh, I did expect that. I did not expect that at all.
This match is so fucking good. I love every time you talk about the women. Clive, you bring up a point that I don't think a lot of people really get or understand or think of. That because of the women's frames are just naturally smaller and sleeker, that there's so much more room for danger and things to happen. There was a true preponderance of fear that someone's going to get hurt in this match. Like a lot of Hell in a Cell matches don't feel like they did when you saw Shawn Michaels versus Taker or Foley doing everything he could to scare the hell out of people in his family. They all feel like they're, I don't want to call them a choreographed spectacle, but like, there's nothing's really going to happen dangerously. Half of them don't even use the cell correctly. They used every inch of that cell. They went out there and they showed the crowd that they were trying to legitimately hurt each other to get over on the other. And again, Becky won a WrestleMania. Becky beat Charlotte a million damn times. Becky made Ronda Rousey look like an idiot. But the most important thing that entire run that Becky did was getting over on Sasha Banks. Because ultimately to wrestlers and wrestling fans, all that other stuff is cool, but you got to give me classics in the ring. You got to show me that you can make it work and wrestle the best match in the ring. And I don't think in her run as the man, she wrestled the best matches until she got with the standard, the blueprint, the boss. That match is so impeccably wrestled, so impeccably fought, right? The perfect finish to the match. There is not a moment from the moment they announce the match is starting until the moment the cage is lifted up that is not perfect. And I think if you list all the Hell in the Cells, clearly it can't match what Foley did when he went through the cage or flew off the cage. But if you're talking about just standard Hell in a Cell matches, it's up there with the best of them. It's up there with Taker and Edge. It's up there with Shawn and Taker. It's up there with all the greats. This is one of the best Hell in a Cell matches ever. And because of that, I think it's one of the best women's matches ever. But because of the stip, we don't think about it in the list of great matches. So this is number one for me in the list of Sasha. When I think of Sasha Banks and I take away my bias and my heart and I just think, man, what's the best match she ever wrestled? I think this is it.
Wow.
Huge praise, absolutely huge praise, and well deserved. Like you said, it was elite level in a gimmick that has had some outstanding matches. So yeah, I can see exactly why it made the cut.
I think that that I wasn't a massive fan of Becky Lynch. Her whole shtick just sort of grated on me a bit. So maybe that's what's clouding my judgment with this match. It's just in terms of cell matches that Sasha's been in, I wouldn't rate it as high as the others. Might be spoilers given there, but fair enough. I respect your opinion. I might need to watch it back, to be honest with you.
With the benefit of some hindsight, I would like to see what you think of it now.
Okay, I'll watch that this week then. So, while we're on the subject of Becky Lynch, will we go with her top three?
Why not? Let's do it. So, let me get my Becky Lynch notes up then.
For those of you who don't know, this man would talk about notes. This man has like books and books and books worth of notes.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I did, for context, watch 20, well, no, because I've got some overlap. I'd say about 15 matches building up for this podcast. Because they are so phenomenal. The fact is that these women have changed the game for wrestling, not just for women, but just for wrestling in general. So they at least deserve that respect. Right, I have a similar kind of issue with Becky Lynch as Clive did. I don't think she's got the body of work that the rest of the Four Horsewomen have. I mean, all the way through her NXT run, she was kind of like the lame duck of the group almost. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I think she's got a decent body of work, and certainly a more recent stuff has been a level above what she did in NXT. That being said, I have got a couple of NXT matches in the mix. But I'm going to actually go with, for my first pick, I'm going to go with Becky versus Charlotte Flair, the last women standing match from Evolution.
That's your number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Good God.
Okay. And it's an outstanding match. Don't get me wrong. I think what ruins it, and I understand why, is the finish. It had to keep that storyline going. I understand that, but for me, that kind of like dulled the 20 minutes or so of amazing action that we got. Again, headlining or semi-headlining a pay-per-view built all the way around just the women's roster is absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that these two women had been essentially carrying the company on their backs for the whole of this year. I mean, Charlotte, you could suggest that she carried the women's division on her back for 10 years, but the match was outstanding. It really kind of built into that almost kind of frenemy relationship that we've seen between Becky and Charlotte. Kind of like almost on the similar lines of the Bayley and Sasha friendship / enemies storyline, but these women absolutely brought it. Becky's reactions when Charlotte kind of hulked up and was going mental, it shows a massive improvement on her character work from when she was in NXT. So yeah, that's why this has to be on the list for me.
What was wrong with the ending? You said the ending was a bit controversial.
I thought that this was the ending with Ronda Rousey. It's not the ending with Ronda Rousey, so it's not the ending that's an issue. I have done dropped a bollock, but yeah, it still makes number 3 for my list.
So, what was the surprise for Rance that was number 3?
I mean, so okay, I guess we can break kayfabe here. That's my number 1 list. I think that is Becky's best match, bar none. I think that is the match going. I think that's the match going down when you remember Becky Lynch's career. And I understand people will think of the triple threat because that's her biggest moment, but her best match, I think people will say, versus Charlotte at Evolution. In fact, that's her highest rated match, I believe, if you believe in star rankings. Mm-hmm. That match was lit on the top of every list of match of the year that year. And maybe it's because, Nikki Bella went out and wrestled a barn burner of a match with Ronda afterwards. I'm joking. It wasn't bad, but you know what I mean. But I would have thought it'd be higher than number 3. But hey, everybody's list is different. I know one of the matches you put on your list. You said NXT, so clearly we know one of them. I'm curious to know the other.
I didn't say they were going to make the list. I'm just saying I have them
and he's
in the conversation.
In the chamber.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's your third one then, Rance? Third best.
So my third one is, because I figured both of you would put that match, that NXT match that I think we all have on our minds. I wanted to give some love to a match that Becky had that is underappreciated in my mind, and that is at Royal Rumble 19, her versus Asuka, the match that kind of started the ascent. Because if you remember, that Royal Rumble, it was Asuka versus, because Becky had already lost one of the titles
Mm-hmm.
And Becky had lost her title because she hadn't. This is heading to WrestleMania to main event, and I love this. It was such a small story, but I love the story of Becky is the baddest woman walking the earth, but the one person she can't fuck with is Asuka. I thought that was such a cool story, and if nothing else, it helped build up Asuka better than anybody because Becky's up here, going back and forth toe to toe with The Rock and with John Cena and with Edge and beating everybody else, but the one person she can't touch is Asuka. I thought that was so dope, and the match was great. And of course, Asuka chokes her out. She doesn't tap, but she chokes her out, and hurts her knee in the match. And so, on top of how great the match was to me and how memorable the match was to me personally, I think that being the catalyst for the run with the title, that match being the genuine catalyst, I think it was worthy of admission on this list.
I will throw a curveball here and say I don't even think that's the best out of their Royal Rumble matches.
That's fair. Because 20 was great, but 19 was more important, I think, to me because she lost. And what was the main thing you and I said that entire run here on the Ray and Clive show that we've been having since 2017 from the very beginning? The one thing we said was she doesn't show any vulnerability, and that hurt her in our eyes, right? She was getting too over on people. Well, this is the one time she wasn't. And I think that vulnerability that she showed with Asuka helped her immensely as a character.
Fair enough. Mags, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look outside the Four Horsewomen, the Becca and Asuka storyline is the one that probably generated the most chemistry. So I can understand an Asuka match certainly being involved. It wouldn't have, that particular one wouldn't have been my pick, but I can understand why. And I think I've actually telegraphed my pick with my faux pas in my last pick.
No, well, I've not gotten onto it yet. So for my third
Becky versus Alexa.
For what, the tables match? Right, my third pick is Becky versus Charlotte at Royal Rumble 2016.
Gotcha.
To be honest, the invasion of the NXT ladies at the end of 2015, that was a vehicle for Charlotte Flair. She was the one that was in the big feuds at the start. She won the Divas title from the off. A lot of focus was on Charlotte Flair going forward, and she cemented herself pretty well leading into for our American listeners, the fall season, leading into winter. But then it came to January and we had Becky Lynch's first sort of shot at the big leagues with a match against Charlotte at the Royal Rumble. And I just think Becky Lynch showed every intentions, like, listen, okay, Charlotte, you've done well for yourself, you've got the attention, the spotlight's on you, but I'm here to make a difference as well. And I thought Becky played a really good underdog in that match. It showed her wrestling acumen, and that's all. Charlotte was starting to get used to for the main roster side of things, the cockiness that only a Flair can pull off. But Becky fought from underneath regularly throughout that match, and that's one that I hadn't watched in my research, but it's always one that sticks in my mind when it comes to Becky Lynch, and I just wanted to give that one some love. I think that was a message to the main roster that you've got someone here who can tangle with the big guns as well. Yeah, and
basically a warning to start stepping your game up, because things were going to change in the women's division, and that you had to be better than the stuff that they were putting out before that.
Yep, definitely.
Right.
You can't go wrong with any Becky versus Charlotte match. By the way, they talk about chemistry.
Yeah. going into my second pick, and like I said, I think I've telegraphed it with my mistake about the ending. But I'm actually now tempted to drop it altogether. So I'm obviously talking about the Asuka versus Becky versus Flair match from TLC 2018, and the ending where Ronda Rousey comes out and costs both Becky and Charlotte the match. Great match, absolutely outstanding. It's so difficult to have like a three-way dance in a ladder match that doesn't have some sort of mistakes, but that match was so crisp, and we talk about Asuka being kind of an outsider of the Four Horsewomen, but she can go with the absolute best of them, and the element that she added to that match was superb. But I'm actually now, because I've made the mistake of telegraphing it, I'm going to drop it from my list, and I'm going to replace it. I'm going to replace it with Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks from NXT TakeOver Unstoppable. And the reason why is, whilst the TLC match was arguably a better match, this was the coming out party for Becky Lynch in terms of character work. Before this, she was always kind of like the smiley, happy, dancing a jig Irish woman. This was when she started to learn character work. And not only learn character work, but be able to hang with arguably the most naturally gifted wrestler in NXT at that time with Sasha Banks. The way she was able to sell the injuries to the arm and the body parts, and it was just a really well done match. There's nothing that you would say is absolutely outstanding. There's nothing that they do that is groundbreaking, that's never been seen before. But it was such a good match from someone who hadn't set the world on fire, who was the weak link in the Four Horsewomen at the time. This was where she started to step up and say, I belong in this group. I'm part of this group. I think it was when she actually first dyed her hair bright orange as well, if I remember rightly. And the way that she took Sasha Banks to the limit and was still trying to fight out of the bank statement before giving up. I think this was a coming out party for kind of like the genesis of the Becky Lynch that we got in WWE with the man and basically the star of the women's wrestling scene. So I'm going to go with Sasha versus Becky from Unstoppable. Controversial pick.
No, not at all. And breaking kayfabe, since we've done it already, that is actually my first pick for Becky. You said you basically stole a few minutes of my monologue. So.
That's what you get for sharing your screen. Is that thunder? Someone moving a wardrobe?
You heard that?
Was that thunder?
Sounds like someone moving a wardrobe.
Man, look, so for the record, I am Scottish, but I am spending my quarantine in the States in my other home of Houston. Yeah, it's been pretty bad out here the past week. Like, literally, like, I left my mom's house yesterday and, like, almost had to evacuate her because, like, the roads were getting flooded. So it's getting crazy out here.
There is a Houston in Scotland.
That's what I meant. Well, what other Houston are you talking about?
I mean, everything that Americans do, it's just copycats of Britain, isn't it? Really? Yeah,
pretty much.
Well, I mean, we did kind of start from y'all. So I'm sorry. They did kind of start from us. So what do you expect?
The mask is slipping. The mask is slipping.
For the record, that the Becky Sasha match, that was Becky's first match, really kind of as that new, that was the first time with the new music. That was the first time she got the steam.
Mm-hmm.
And after the match, the crowd loved that shit so much they just chanted her music for like 5 minutes afterwards. That shit was so dope to me.
That was a sensational match. I mean, 2015 NXT Takeovers, all women's matches were unbelievable. maybe Bayley and Nia Jax, can't include that in there in terms of greatness. But those matches and the other takeovers were sensational. It was one of the rare matches, not rare, but most vocal, where I've heard someone really root for Becky to kick out or break free of the bank statement, and also where the crowd were unanimously behind Becky winning with the disarm her. It was a lot of that match was on the ground. A lot of it was on the ground. A lot of submission stuff going on there, to the point where it felt like I was watching a submission match, and the crowd were behind every second of it. And I just remember that being, as Max said, a huge coming out party for Becky Lynch, and it made me take her seriously. It made me take Sasha Banks seriously as well. But the standing ovation that Becky got for lasting so long after the fact was a special one. And yes, you've got your Brooklyn and you've got your Respect Takeover women's title matches, but that Unstoppable, fantastic. I love that one. Always sing praises for that one.
So that is the match that I was going to put in place of the Asuka match, but I wanted to show some love to the Asuka feud. Mm-hmm. But my number 2 for Becky is actually, I lied to you. Charlotte versus Becky is my number 2. Not my number 1. Yeah. So Charlotte versus Becky at Evolution. We don't have to go too much further in it. We've all kind of talked about it, but I just think, with all the respect to Ronda and Nikki and the star power those two people bring, the entire back of that program, of that first ever women's pay-per-view, was built off the backs of what Becky and what Charlotte were doing. Sasha and Bayley will forever be intertwined for what they've done, their entire history of their characters. And I believe that you could say the same about Charlotte versus Becky. They'll be forever be intertwined. Just fantastic stuff. Great match. When I first watched it, but the spot where Becky does the leg drop off the ladder didn't seem as badass, and then you go back and watch it and realize, yeah, she damn near broke her hip.
Yep.
Great match. So, and they had a lot of good matches with ladders. Come to think of it.
Yeah.
They had 2 TLC matches in there. So for the interest of time, I'll just say that and keep it moving, because I know we have a lot of similar ones in this list. So
it's also my number 2. I am a firm believer. One of my preferred styles of wrestling at the moment is like those ugly, gritty fights. Your Jay White, Naito's, your Walter, and anyone basically. And I think if you're going to be a top tier champion, you need to have good brawling in your arsenal. And this match was what definitely brought it to the fore for Becky Lynch for me. She was a badass in every sense of the word that night. It's no wonder that, as eye-rolling as sometimes it was, the comparisons to Steve Austin rung true that night, where he could brawl with the best of them. Becky certainly brawled with the best of them. She was fearless. The double leg leg drop. Like, you undersold it when you watched it the first time. When I saw that the first time, I thought that was some heavy duty stuff there. I think she did that again at the TLC with Asuka. That was main roster, even though she was already the fans' darling. That was a big coming out party, main roster time for Becky Lynch. It was unbelievable performance. So I think all that's left is your number 1s, both of you, because I've given mine away. No, you've given yours away.
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't.
Right.
Max hasn't either, though.
Okay, so my number 1 is actually not even the best technical match. It's WrestleMania 35. It has to be.
Sure.
It's her. We talk about opuses. This is magnum opus. The storyline going into it was so well done. The addition of Charlotte, whilst it was hated pretty much unanimously at the time, I stood out on that limb and said, no, this needs to happen because Charlotte has carried this women's division for 10 years. She deserves to be in this match. And I think that if she wasn't in this match, it probably would have gone down as a damp squib, because for all as good as Becky is, I don't think she's the ring general that Charlotte Flair is. And certainly when you're going against someone like Ronda Rousey, who's still in her first year as a wrestler, I think you needed Charlotte Flair to be in this match. So whilst it's not their best match in terms of star ratings and plaudits, the cultural significance of this match, it just cannot be overestimated. For women to headline WrestleMania was, even then, even at WrestleMania 35, was unheard of. It was never ever going to be on the cards until Becky Lynch throughout that year became the biggest star in wrestling, from the whole kind of trying to turn a heel and the fans saying fuck you, we behind you 100%, to the face breaker, to the stuff at the Royal Rumble, to the dropping the title to Asuka, and the whole build up, the hatred between her and Ronda Rousey, and then adding Charlotte Flair into that mix, it just made for a great storyline. The match didn't live up to it, and I think we'll probably all agree on that, but you cannot underestimate how significant of a match this is, and for me, when you think of Becky Lynch, you think of this match, so that's why it's got to be on for me.
That's a great point. And the only reason I didn't include it on my list was because the match was bad. I'm not going to call it match bad. That's disrespectful. The match was subpar. When going on watching it back, it wasn't as lackluster as I remember it being. Certainly, sure. I've watched a hell of a lot of better women's matches in this run-up for this podcast, but it was not as bad as I remember it being. The finish is still sketchy as all hell. It is terrible, yes.
But some of the stuff that happens in the match is really, really good stuff. It's a decent wrestling match, but its cultural importance means it has to be on the list for me.
And for the record, yes, I'm with you. In a vacuum, it's probably a good match, but you have to understand, we watched like 9 hours of wrestling before that. So if there's nothing that it can do to keep your interest, I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just in the same breath, the same reason why we don't look at AJ Styles versus Nakamura at 34 and go back and watch that match again. It's a really good match. But we had lived through a marathon before that. It didn't really do much. But no, yes, your point about its importance is noted, and I agree. It is probably the most important women's match of all time.
Yeah, as I'd say it is the most important. In terms of personal preference, I wasn't a fan. I must admit, I loved that brawl that they had on TV a couple of weeks beforehand, the parking lot brawl. That was meme-worthy to a ridiculous extent. And I did consider it. I did consider having this in the match. And it wasn't even the ending that took it out for me.
Lowe's has more of what trade pros like you need to get the job done. That means more delivery options, more convenient hours to fit your schedule, and more savings to fit your budget. More of the brands you trust the most. More of everything you need, all in one place. That's why, in the past year, more electricians, landscapers, painters, plumbers, and other pros helped make Lowe's the new home for trade pros. U.S. only.
I just think that ending was unfortunate, where Becky Lynch's knee was a bit too much under Ronda Rousey's back, and it just brought her shoulders up. Pure mistake. Nothing. It was discussed to ad nauseum after the fact, but that was just one of those mere mistakes. It was the calling of the match that killed it for me, where it was very audible. You could hear them basically talking to each other a lot throughout it, so you kind of knew what was going to happen. It's not taking away the massive moment that it was Ronda Rousey. Whether you hate her or love her, she helped bring that to the main event from a...
It doesn't happen without her.
It doesn't.
She's the only reason, yes.
Becky 2 belts, Charlotte, what she'd done for women's wrestling. Again, whether you love her or hate her, she's a big deal when it comes to women's wrestling. it was only right for me that she was included. So from that side of things, and I love a main event in WrestleMania being a triple threat. I do enjoy them. So it hit all the right boxes, ticked all the right boxes for that. It was just the calling of the match. It was just, I'm watching it knowing what's about to happen. You can literally hear when Becky and Charlotte are powerbombing Ronda, you can hear Ronda saying, okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. Tough, but I don't take that away from your pick as number one, Darren.
I mean, like I said, in terms of technical in-ring skill, it's definitely not one of the best, but for the cultural significance and for what it meant to Becky's career, I think that will go down as the one match that defines Becky Lynch.
Or could that be Becky versus Sasha at Hell in a Cell?
It could.
Which is my number one. And again, I don't have to talk. I already bloviated about it enough, but I just want to note that every good thing I said about this match concerning Sasha, Becky won this match. Mm-hmm. That should tell you the importance it was to Becky's career, to Becky's run. Once again, all these matches we talked about showed Becky could do things in certain moments. The Evolution match showed that she could draw, she could brawl. The match at WrestleMania showed that she could main event and be looked at as a legitimate linchpin of the top of the company. Mm-hmm. All the other matches showed important moments. The only one that showed she could really wrestle, with the exception of NXT match against the same person, was this match against Sasha. This is the one of all these matches where you can say, damn, she wrestled a great match. So all that other stuff is cool. But ultimately, this is the one that's going to help her legacy the most long term. Yeah, all these people remember her for this shit. But, like, do you think you want her to be remembered like Ultimate Warrior is? Where, like, yeah, I remember him before the match and after the match, but what did he do between the ropes? This match shows you, yeah, she's a beast inside the ring, too. So
who are we moving on to next, then? Let's give some love to Bayley.
Interesting.
Bayley.
Save the best to last.
For me, like I mentioned when we were talking about Sasha, they're so inextricably linked as a couple. It was hard to kind of come up with matches that didn't involve Sasha Banks, and kind of the same matches that made Sasha Banks' career stand out. She needed that dancing partner, and for Sasha Banks, it's generally always been Bayley as that person. So I am going to be repeating at least a couple of my picks, and one of them has to be Takeover Brooklyn. So it would be unfair to put that higher on Bayley's list than I did for Sasha, so I'm going to have to put that at spot number 3, and for pretty much all the same reasons. The fact that this was two women that were setting a bar for women's wrestling, not just in NXT but company wide and essentially worldwide. These two, they just left everything in that ring. The storytelling, the crisp precision of wrestling. It's just an outstanding match. So yes, that has got to be on my list. So it gets spot number 3.
Rance?
Well done, sir. So yes, clearly this could be Bayley's list should be the best of Sasha Banks.
Keep
it a buck. Now, I don't mean this in any disrespectful way or manner, but Bayley does not have a very long list of standout singles matches to me, or standout matches. Mm-hmm. Bayley has a bunch of good matches, but she does not have a bunch of grade A. Not in my opinion. So I didn't want to have...
The stats may speak differently, but we'll get to that.
Oh.
Well, I mean, if you listen to Midweek Mainstay, some head drama, you know who's normally right of the two of us between me and Mr. Matt. So I want to give again love and respect and honorable mention to the match, the Iron Woman match. I did not want to do all 3 matches with Sasha, so I replaced that with probably her biggest moment outside of Sasha in the WWE, and that is beating Charlotte for the championship on Raw right before WrestleMania 33, I believe it was, when she headed to break her streak for the never losing at a pay-per-view. I don't look fondly back on the Bayley buddy, Bayley happy, the babyface Bayley years. I don't. Of course, I think I'm in NXT stands. Go ahead. What did you say?
She was the female John Cena. Don't you forget.
She was. But you hate John Cena, so.
So does China, apparently.
We don't want that smoke. We don't want any of that smoke. But yes, she was. And I give all the respect to her. And I loved the NXT because it had a purpose in NXT. You saw it built. There was a reason for it. When she got on the main roster, it was no different than they signed somebody else and said, you be you, without explaining why you're you. And that's why I think a lot of it was lackluster for a good portion of the time. But this is one of the few matches that worked, I think. This is one of the few matches that showed that she's more than just merchandise and a happy gimmick. Because ultimately, Bayley is the most versatile of all 4 of the women, of all 4 of the Four Horsewomen. She's the one that can do the most things, I believe. She can wrestle the most amount of matches and most amount of styles and do the most amount of things. She is the hybrid, if you will, of all 4 of them. But she never really got a chance to show it because that damn gimmick was so overbearing and overpowering. But this match, she just went out there and she got it. And had a great match with Charlotte, beat Charlotte, got her biggest accolade at that moment, which led to one thing we forget, led to her retaining her women's championship at WrestleMania 33. So yeah, with respect to the moment, with respect to how good the match was, with respect to the situation, by all rights, this should be Sasha versus Bayley at Takeover respect, but I just want to show some love to something else. So I'm gonna throw that number 3.
Okay, I mean, just to jump in here before Clive gives his pick, this match is my number 2.
Look at you.
and it's because of everything that you just said. I thought that the Bayley character didn't really work on main roster, but this was her kind of main roster coming out. The match was absolutely outstanding. The fact that she got the win, and what actually makes it more special for me is that when you look back at this Raw, you don't look at it for this match. It's for the Festival of Friendship. So they'd gone through all that, and they had to come out and perform a match, and they come with this. It's outstanding. That shows when you are pushed to raise the bar that these 4 horsewomen are more than capable to do that. So yeah, I had that as my number 2.
I was second guessing my pick, and here comes Mags for the win. That's why that's my partner.
Well, my third one is very, very recent, and I mean a couple of weeks ago recent. Obviously, due to unforeseen circumstances, we weren't able to record Ricky and Clive. Sorry, oh shit, Rance and Clive last week.
Edit that. Scratch that from the record.
Yep, where's the stenographer when you need them? The Rance and Clive show, we weren't able to do it last week, but I was going to wax lyrical about the Bayley and Bianca Belair match. I thought, once again, and a lot of credit goes to Bianca Belair. I've heard comments of Bianca Belair being quite green, and I've never agreed with that, ever. I think she's very good. And Bayley's, you're right, Rance, there aren't many memorable matches that she's had, which made this list quite easy to pick from the rest of them. But this match with Bianca Belair, it was a sequencing that was really, really good. There was a specific point, and it's just a small thing, and it's one that you don't really pay attention to, but there was a bit where Bayley whipped Bianca into the turnbuckle, and she just turned round and did it. It was like this kind of chaos theory, but not the full roll through of the German suplex. A chaos theory style pin, but they were already next to the ropes, and Bayley was trying to use the ropes to pin, or to help her pin. Thought that ring awareness is so deft, but so ingrained in Bayley that while she might not have memorable matches, she's very technically gifted. And there was another point in the match as well where she made sure that the referee didn't see something again. That might actually have been on SmackDown recently. Her ring awareness and sort of, not courtside, what do you call it? Round the mat, the barricade area. She's very aware of her surroundings, and I think just that was shown quite clearly in the Bianca match. Not to say that Bianca was carried to a great match, but Bayley certainly held her own. And I just wanted to give some love to Bayley's recent turn of events. She's been on some character arc the last year or so, and I would say that you could, in terms of if you want to do a deep dive on a certain character, I would include the likes of Tommaso Ciampa, Seth Rollins. In terms of a career, if you were to pan out their careers, that would be a really good conversation, and Bayley's in there for me. The wacky wavy inflatable arm guys, when it sort of just hit rock bottom with the "This Is Your Life" segment, slowly but surely she was getting back into it, and then we had the turn and the Karen, and now she's a deranged Karen. If you notice, the hair's a bit more wild, and I mean, she's probably styled that way, but the hair's a bit wilder. She's laughing more hysterically. She's losing it, and she's a really, really good case study for characters who are in it for the long haul, and I think that match exemplified it very well. So that was my number 3.
Outstanding pick.
The Ray and Clive Show. Coming soon, the character study of Bayley.
Please, let's do it.
I'm down. Because, we record every week like we've been doing since the start of 2017.
Oh, here we go. Listen, there's Mags has got about 9 pods to do before midnight tonight, so let's get the ball rolling here.
Good point. Okay. So let me give my number 2 real quick since you gave your number 2, and that's Sasha versus Sasha Hell in a Cell. That match is more about Sasha to me. But two dance partners, right? You can't wrestle a classic by yourself. Some people may be able to, but most can't. And that was probably the perfect. You spoke about her character and how she's evolved herself to this new character and kind of devolved, if you will. Well, that devolution started at this match because this was the match after she lost the championship for 434 days, or however long it was. And she was so confident walking into the cell knowing, shit, Sasha can't defend a title. She's never done it. And got her ass beat. And this is what started that descent into madness. And she was perfect in this match. I think you mentioned earlier, whoever talked about it earlier mentioned the call back to the spot and Brooklyn when she was kicking the leg. The spot I remember the most is when she couldn't use the tape, and she looked at the ref and said, "Can you do this for me?" And the ref was like, "No, I'm the ref." And it's just perfect. Yeah. So while this match is Sasha's opus, it can't be the opus that it is without Bayley. So that's my number 2.
Yeah, same here. And there was a specific point, I can't remember exactly what she said, but Bayley was getting more desperate and worried about where things were going in the match that she started screaming at Michael Cole over and above the usual deprecation. It was a fucking hell, Michael Cole. I'm going to take out my worries and fears and frustrations on you. And it was just her character work. Oh, it's just so good just now. So that's my number 2, and we've discussed that as well. So, Darren, what's your number 2 for the hug life?
I already went through my number 2. It was the match on Raw with Charlotte Flair, the Festival of Friendship. So I'll jump straight into my number 1, and it's obvious what it's going to be. It's the Iron Woman match at Takeover Respect, and kind of like how Ray said, you can't have a match like that without having a dance partner. And just to focus on Bayley going into this, you talk about character evolution. This happened in this 130-minute match. She went into the match worried, having to face her best friend and almost mortal enemy. And then going through the match, you can see how she doesn't want to do the things to Sasha that she has to do. And then as we get later and later in the match and she's getting more and more desperate with the time running out, she starts to almost be that kind of like, I have to do this. So she kind of picks up the pace. The stuff again with Izzy, I just thought was phenomenal storytelling. And yeah, this is a benchmark in women's wrestling, period. So it has to be Bayley's magnum opus for me.
Yep, same here. It's my number one as well, and we've discussed it at length tonight and several times over the years.
Well, so mine is actually the actual match at Brooklyn. And the reason I didn't put that on Sasha's list is because Sasha has had more matches that have defined her than that one, because that match was not about Sasha. That match was about Bayley. This match is, like I said, about Bayley. We talked a lot about magnum opuses and whatnot. This is the perfect encapsulation of the babyface Bayley character. It is, if Becky versus Becky versus Charlotte versus Ronda is the most important women's match of all time, this is second.
Uh-huh.
So, this is the match I literally showed my daughter to continue her interest in the wrestling. And she was enthralled the entire 25 minutes. So, shout out to them in this. You cannot go wrong with any mix of Bayley versus Sasha. I mean, that's Shawn versus Brett. That's Rock versus Austin. You know what I'm saying? That is, I don't know, give me another mix. Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn. Cena and Orton. Yeah.
See, the reason that I went for this, because obviously I speak very highly of the Brooklyn match, but in terms of Bayley, that was more of a resilience thing with Bayley on Respect Night, and just from a personal standpoint, the hype vignette, again, very emotional. So our very own James Boyd on One Nation Radio, he was there that night, and he said it was a hotbed.
Was he?
Yeah, he was there that night, and when Izzy had her wig snatched, the place was just like, it's the most insane full sail they've heard. So I think I was just more invested in that match. The Brooklyn match took me most by surprise, but the Brooklyn one I was invested from the get-go, even beforehand. So we're here, we're at the Queen, Tolly's favourite.
This is going to hurt me to my very soul, praising Tolly's Bay, Charlotte Flair. But to be fair, she's been arguably the best wrestler, best women's wrestler in WWE in all the time that she's been there. So I have to give her a due. She has been an outstanding ambassador for WWE's women's wrestling, and she's had a lot of really, really good matches. So for my third pick, I'm going to go with Survivor Series 2018, Charlotte versus Ronda Rousey. Obviously, we're building towards that historical WrestleMania. We didn't know that we were getting the triple threat yet, but what we did have was a Ronda Rousey who was, while she had a phenomenal rookie year in wrestling, she was still incredibly green, and she needed Charlotte Flair to carry her through this match, and Charlotte Flair carried her to a 4-star plus match. She took all of Ronda's offense and ate it up. She gave Ronda probably Ronda's best match in terms of ratings, and then we get some of the best character work from Charlotte Flair, and for me, she is so good when she goes wild and crazy. The hair goes all over. She gets that wide 100-yard stare. You can see her going red in the face. She starts screaming. She absolutely lays waste to Ronda Rousey with the kendo stick, to the point where Ronda was bleeding from the mouth. It's a great story, and I think it's a phenomenal match, and really kind of set the scene for what we were going to get in the next 6 months. So I'm going with that. Survivor Series 2018.
A very, very good shout, I have to say.
It is. I don't like the finish because it was kind of like, we're going to save this shit. Shit, don't save it if you're going to fucking do it. But, yeah, it's still a great match. Try to run through this pretty fast. My number 3 for Charlotte is probably the biggest built Charlotte match that exists. The Queen versus the Shriek. WrestleMania 34. Maybe the best ever entrance of a woman in history. Her reenacting the same entrance she was a part of with Hunter years earlier. Beautifully done. Great match. People legitimately had no idea who would win this match because Asuka was just so protected. And Charlotte was, LOL, Charlotte wins. She had already got to that point at this point. Great match, great build, great finish. I appreciated that they kind of had the double face hug afterwards, because not only was that, you like to see that type of stuff, but later on, when AJ and Nakamura did it and Nak turned on them, it sucked you in even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, this is... I just can't see, with everything she's done, I can't not see this match being on the list of her best. Not to mention, this is one of the first, maybe the second time, actually I'm foreshadowing, that a women's match was the best match on a WrestleMania.
Oh, I know what that foreshadowing is.
Wink, wink.
By the way, you say wink, but did you see Anthony Agogo's tweet earlier?
His tweet game has been brilliant for the last couple of days.
Can I say that he's my favorite? He's my favorite AEW wrestler at the moment.
Listen, I know what Clive's corner is, so we'll talk about Agogo on the midweek mainstay.
Hey, let's go.
Right, that's my number 3 as well. I was surprised at the result. I felt with Asuka, not only just Asuka's streak, but at the time, it feels as if Royal Rumble winner, the first Women's Royal Rumble, you would expect them to win. Wasn't the case, but I just think that was a really solid match, and I am a firm believer that although it's rematch after rematch and it's still happening even this week on Monday Night Raw, Charlotte and Asuka have a very storied history together, whether against each other or with each other, and I'm here for it. All the rematches, yes, they happen, but they've told a great story so far, and I think it has to be included in the rundown. So that's my number 3, that WrestleMania match. Apart from when fucking Arsehole Features was trying to steal the limelight, the first fifth of the show, Mr. Cena. But anyway,
great bit. It's not one that's actually even made my kind of like group selection. For my second one, I'm actually torn between 2, because I think it's quite obvious what my number 1's going to be. So I'm gonna encapsulate both, basically. So I was going to go with NXT Takeover in Your House, the triple threat between Charlotte, Io, and Rhea Ripley, and I think that for me, the reason that match is so good is because, firstly, you had Charlotte Flair playing that heel character, coming back to NXT, getting all the grief of you don't go here from Bianca. And it was almost like an apology for the return to NXT and winning the NXT title not working, because for me, I feel that stunted Rhea Ripley to a point where I still think that she was stunted up till very, very recently. I think that really set her back so long in her career. But it was also kind of the making of Io Shirai. Now, we as hardcore seasoned wrestling fans know a lot about Io Shirai from her time in Japan. But she wasn't as well known here in the West to the casual fans outside the stuff with the Mae Young Classic. And this was Io having the opportunity against two big bruisers, essentially, with Rhea Ripley and Charlotte, having the opportunity to show that she is one of the best in the world. But I'm not actually going to go with that one. I'm actually going to go with Sasha Banks versus Charlotte from Raw 2016, October 2016.
Is that the draft episode?
Falls Count Anywhere?
The title match.
Yep.
July
19th, I believe.
Match?
I don't think it was Falls Count Anywhere. I think it was just a standard match.
It was the one. It was the one where. Well, I'm speaking on your behalf here, but it was the night of the draft, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. It was just another phenomenally well worked match between two women who have amazing chemistry. Probably for me, the two most naturally gifted horsewomen. Just Charlotte absolutely beat the living breaks off Sasha Banks. She did the twisting body press from the top rope to the floor, which was absolutely outstanding. But then the finish comes when Banks does the tilt-a-whirl into the bank statement. Which was almost reversed into a pin and then rolled into another bank statement, and the kind of stretch that you saw on Sasha Banks' body, she was almost bent in half in that bank statement, and having to relinquish and tap. It's just again another outstanding match from Charlotte Flair. So that gets my number 2. So Sasha Banks versus Charlotte from Raw on the 4th of October, I think it was 2016.
It's a very celebrated night. That one. Sorry, Rance, on you go.
No, I was gonna backdoor what you said. There's so many underrated matches that they've had on TV, and all we think about are the pay-per-view matches, but they've had some classics on TV.
Yeah.
But so I mentioned that the last match I said for my number 3 was the best match of WrestleMania. This one was also the best match of WrestleMania. This one was the best match of the biggest WrestleMania ever that I was at. Bye Bye Divas, Hello Women, WrestleMania 32, Charlotte versus Sasha versus Becky. That match, boy, I tell you, that the women went out there. This is the one time that I remember hearing jaded men say, well, that probably should have main evented. The rest should have main evented. This is the first time that the crowd who wanted bra and panties and lingerie matches and puppies and all this ridiculous nonsense. That's the first time that crowd was like, oh yeah, they deserve to main event. That was a great match, and the women killed it. The pomp and circumstance of Lita throwing away the Divas title and bringing back the women's championship. Seeing Nikki Bella come back out earlier in the night from a broken neck and having all the women kind of rally around her from that moment because she legitimately broke her neck for wrestling. And then to see the 3 biggest women of the sport finish what all those women before them started and go out there and have a fucking barn burner of a match. Sasha coming out with her cousin who was just put in, Snoop Dogg, who was put in the Hall of Fame the night before. Becky coming out with her best Edge impression with the Native American love. I don't know what that was about. And Charlotte wearing the robe that her dad wore when he retired at at 24, because it was 10 years before that. Perfect, man. Perfect. Even the fact that Charlotte pinned Becky because Rick was holding Sasha back adds to the match. Just it's a near perfect match. The best match at WrestleMania 32. And again, Charlotte just shows that physically she's better than everybody.
Mags disagrees.
No, I think he was absolutely right. Like, another one that I didn't have on my extended list, but it's you can't discount it because she's had so many matches where she's carried the rest of the women, and that's not saying that she carried them particular women, but that her and the Four Horsewomen are levels above a lot of the women's wrestlers, even still now. So yeah, it is a good pick.
Yep. Controversial opinion on this one. Have you watched it back, Rance?
The match I just said?
Uh-huh.
I've watched it one time since.
I personally found it botch heavy, like heavy botch heavy.
There are quite a few botches, yes.
And I know it's unfair of me to judge a match on that, but it was to the point where it was a bit too much. So that's why it wasn't even considered. I understand the importance of it. The pomp and circumstance was fantastic. Always happy to see Lita on my screen. That's an insight into my teenage life. But yeah,
good man, by the way.
What was that?
Saying good man, by the way. Yes, Lita is quite a wonderful woman. Wink, wink.
Yes.
Respectfully.
Oh, that's great. But my number two is I know what the number one is, definitely. So I think I have to include the last woman standing match, because although Becky went over very strong in that match, that's definitely a match that it takes two to tango. And just, although their feud continued and Ronda Rousey was included, that felt like a culmination for me, where it was brewing since SummerSlam, was it? It was a triple threat with Carmella. It was brewing since then, and I just think, yes, Becky was very good in that match, but like how we've argued for Sasha Banks, in favour of Sasha Banks, Becky did a masterful job in putting Charlotte Flair did a masterful job in putting Becky Lynch over, especially in this match, and I think that match specifically encapsulated how well she put Becky over. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think it's one of the only times that personally I've been satisfied with how well she's put someone else over. So I have to give that love to show the rare selfless side of Charlotte.
That's fair. Right, number one. I'm tempted, like Clive, to go with Evolution, the Last Man Standing match. But as I did with Becky, and as I did with Sasha and Bayley, I can't have a match of such big significance be the number one for one kind of dance partner without it being the number one for the other one. So it has to be the triple threat from WrestleMania 35 for me. Whilst again, it wasn't the best match of Charlotte's career. She's had way better. Just the cultural significance of her being the woman that carried women's wrestling on her back for the WWE for such a long time, to being a part of this match when nobody wanted her to be a part of it, and for her to be the best wrestler in the match and be the one that kind of was the ring general, and got a match that it would have been 10 times worse without her being in it. So I've got to have that as Charlotte's best match for me.
Good shout. She's a ring general, and she gets flack. There's only been one stinker of a match that Charlotte's had, and that was with Ruby Riott at maybe Fastlane, I think it was. It was really bad. But for the most part, Charlotte holds her own in many matches. So it's a good shout. Rance?
Charlotte holds her own in many matches. That's funny. Like, many matches hold their own with Charlotte. Like, Charlotte's like Thanos, bro. Like, she's collecting the Infinity Championships. Shout out to a Marvel fan for laughing at that one. But since I forgot, I don't watch superheroes are stupid.
Yep. If you've seen that, you need to say, have you seen the latest Bray Wyatt promo as well?
Oh, well, no. See, I haven't seen the new. I don't like The Fiend. I like old school Bray Wyatt. I am an old school Bray Wyatt, Eater of Worlds Mark.
Mark.
Oh, one more thing. For the record, Brock.
Brock. See,
I love you, Rick. I love you with all my heart, brother.
So it's your number 2.
Number 1, huh?
Number one.
Sorry. I'm getting my 1s and 2s mixed up tonight.
Well, you want to be careful, you'll leave a stain on the bathroom floor.
Hey,
carry on with that.
I can hear Matt from Five Nerds Go truckling away in his green cup right now.
I explained that green cup to Simon recently. Oh, he was mortified.
Yeah, I heard that, yep. No wonder. It's not as bad as his fucking foot dust. That's horrendous. Oh, he's just taken he's had a cup of tea there and it's gone down every wrong way you can think of there.
Yeah. Ugh.
Right, Rance, go for it. You go first this time.
Well, I'm stealing from my big brother Clive, because my number 1 is the match he just talked about so beautifully, is Charlotte versus Becky at Evolution. So I think that is the match that best encapsulates Charlotte's best qualities. You talked about how we say all the time, LOL, Charlotte wins, right? We get that. Charlotte never loses. Well, Charlotte gave herself to Becky that night in every form of fashion. Physically, she gave. Well, what's the meme? She's giving herself to this. God damn, this hurts, but respect.
She left her blood on the line, and she wrestled a literal dinosaur.
Yes,
a literal dinosaur. But no, she really gave herself to Becky that night in every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually, everything. They left everything out on that mat and in that arena. But I think it shows the best of Charlotte, because I think it's very interesting and ironic that the match I picked for Charlotte's number 1 match, the best match of Charlotte's career, in my opinion, given everything we know about the character, is the match she lost. I think that's very profound and deep, because Charlotte just keeps winning and keeps winning and keeps winning, and those matches become inconsequential because she's winning all the time. But this match, I think, is a bigger match and important because Charlotte lost. And very rarely does she lose. And when she loses, it should be, and normally is, of importance. Well, the importance of this is you were helping catapult the biggest star in the industry at the moment. Not to mention that they wrestled a fantastic match. Memories galore. You can remember so many spots. And it helped prop up and was the actual the one match and story that the entire card was built around. Because all the rest of the card was nostalgia. Ronda fought Nikki, who came back from retirement. Sasha and Bayley fought Trish and Lita, right?
Yeah.
Or was it Trish and Lita versus Alexa's goons, Mickey and... I don't remember. What Sasha and Bayley were in the Battle Royal, weren't they? I don't remember.
Is this Evolution?
All I know is... Yeah, all I remember is there were 2 current matches that mattered, and that was Mae Young Classic final, and that was 3, the NXT title match with Shayna, and then this. So of all the main roster matches, this is the only one that was built, and the card was built around this, and they killed it. They drew, they had a great showing, and Becky would not be Becky without Charlotte. And for all the people that laid down to build Charlotte, for her to build Becky, I think was kind of a beautiful synergy. So shout out to Charlotte and Becky. Biggest Charlotte moment of her career.
Okay. Max, have you got a rebuttal there?
No, I was just checking Evolution because kind of like Rance, you look at the big match on there and you kind of forget what actually else went on the card. And Sasha and Bayley teamed up with Natalya to take on the Riot Squad on that card. But yeah, it's a great match, and like I said, I was torn between Evolution and WrestleMania. But for me, when you go back through the annals of history, that significance of headlining WrestleMania is gonna stand up for me.
Okay, I'm trying to think how to. Right, tell you what, you want to give us your top.
Who? Me or Mags?
Mags, sorry, I thought I was. Sorry.
You know, when you talk to these fish, you have to translate, sir.
Sorry, I was Skype issues there. I'll blame it on Skype issues.
Yeah, Skype is a bit. So what is it that you want from me?
Right, I'll give you my number 1. Right.
Okay.
You talked about Charlotte's best performance, Rance, being with Becky. Now, I love this match that I'm going to pick. Loved it so much that I remember it to this day. And surprisingly, it didn't make Sasha's. But I see this more of a Charlotte night than a Sasha night, and that was the Hell in a Cell match that Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks had. This was, yes, Charlotte Flair is a Flair, and she does Flair very well. But this was a night where Charlotte Flair was very manic and she couldn't cope with Sasha Banks regularly taking the title off her on Raw or wherever it was. She had a lot going on with Sasha Banks in that summer of 2016. But I just think that that Hell in a Cell match was so special, and that you saw a top-notch character performance from Charlotte Flair. Yes, she's had some bangers in terms of athleticism, match quality, but in terms of performance, to take Sasha Banks out of the match before technically the match even started, and to give it the old na 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 na, all that stuff, shouting hey hey bye bye as Sasha was being stretchered out to bring her back in, that was the most manic to this date that I've still seen Charlotte. Maybe the TLC that she had with Asuka and Becky, that she seemed very manic, but this was a special night for Charlotte specifically, over and above Sasha. And I know Sasha is very good in Hell in a Cells, but I just feel personally that it was an unbelievable night, unbelievable performance, acting wise for Charlotte, that I have to include this, and it, over and above everything else, this is my favourite Charlotte Flair match.
So let me say this. When I was doing Sasha's list, initially I was going to put all 3 of the Hell in a Cell matches that Sasha was in. Ultimately, I just couldn't do that. I thought that, now I'm splitting hairs here. This is a fantastic match. One of the best matches either one of them has ever wrestled, but I think it's a level below the Bayley and the Becky match. I love the finish, but people hate the finish. But I love it personally because I like when reality sets in and you have to work with reality, right? The table didn't break. Sasha's like 65 pounds. So like, but everything you said about this match is fantastic. You don't really pay attention or hear about or think about that from a character standpoint. Yeah, that might be the best Sean's ever been. Mm-hmm. You spot on. And That's not talked about enough.
I just think, okay, yeah, the table didn't break, and it was an oversight. Personally, they should have moved that table up onto the other post of the turnbuckle. But it didn't take away from the match for me. I just think the mania of Charlotte was unprecedented. And, as you say, a top-notch character performance. And yes, the table didn't break, but just... it didn't take away anything for me at all, personally.
And it's absolutely ironic that it's not even one of her most highly rated matches. I think Dave Meltzer only gave it like, what, a 2.5 or something like that.
Oh, for God's sake, that man.
Yeah, so to show how badly he received it as compared to how great of a match it was, just shows sometimes his WWE anti-bias and even his women's wrestling bias shone through there. But yeah, it is a great match. Not one I personally considered as one of the best, but I can totally understand why you did. One interesting thing that I come across when I was watching these matches is I had one match that could have made the cut for all 4 women, and it was the 4-way match at Takeover Rival. That is an absolutely outstanding match, but it just didn't make the cut because all 4 women have gone on to be so much better than that match that it's kind of like that's almost like the genesis of those 4 as wrestlers, and just like the starting point, as good as it was, they've all gone and totally eclipsed it. But I'm surprised that match didn't actually come up.
It was considered by myself. I'm a big fan of that match. There was a specific sequence. I think the wheelbarrow facebreaker stuff was just shit hot. But I just personally think they've had better matches. But I totally get where you're coming from with that one.
That match reminds me a lot of. Here's going deep in the annals of history. Y'all remember in FCW when Roman, aka Leaky, fought Ambrose, and it was a triple threat. It was Roman versus Ambrose versus Rollins before they became the Shield in FCW, before Seth went to NXT, before Ambrose went to the main roster to do tours, and before Roman got on NXT. And I think it was triple threat match for the 15 championship at the time. And Roman was green as goose shit. But like the match was really good. But you could tell, they're gonna kill the shit in the future. But that fatal 4-way is that to me. Because like you can look at our forum and say, oh, they're gonna kill this shit by 5-10 years from now. So
and it's interesting that they've not. Yeah, it's interesting that they've not actually returned to that exact match, because I think right now that would be an absolute barnstormer.
Yep, I know, especially today. Obviously, Becky's out at the moment, but I think Vince would surely love that. Surely.
Yeah, he's got to have that in his back pocket.
I mean, I know you've got a split roster with SmackDown and Raw to think about, but that's got to be in the think tank for the future.
Yeah, I mean, a Survivor Series or a Bragging Rights, if that ever gets brought back.
They should bring that back just for a laugh.
Bragging Rights? No. No.
A stomping ground.
Oh, God. Or a balls on fire. Right. I'm very, very conscious of time. I know that some of us here have got a busy night ahead of us. I've got a proposition for you. Now, we were going to do a ranking. I'm happy to take the rankings of your women, but how about we take the discussion for that over onto Twitter once this episode's released? How do you feel about that? Because I've got a wee quiz for you.
Okay, I mean, we could leave the rankings till next week then.
All right.
Part 2.
Oh, listen to this chap.
How do you know that the Ray and Clive show we're gonna have Mags back next week?
And the draw. you at least double your 3 or 4 listens when I'm on the show.
Right, well, how does this sound? We'll stop tonight. We will do the rankings next week, so this can be a 2-parter. And it sounds like we've organised another episode next week.
That is.
And if a certain other regular guest, Ricardo, is back, he can chime in with his great favourite matches of the of the Four Horsewomen.
And how does
I love you, Rick.
And I'll be honest, I did the most low effort quiz of all time this week, where I'm happy to like have a week to refresh it, because honestly it was like, who's got the most Twitter followers out of the 4 of them? Shit, like really bad questions. So we'll do the rankings and a 4 Horsewomen super quiz next week. How does that sound as a 2-parter for our fans and listeners and critiques?
Sounds good to me.
Right, so I know you're both part of the Midweek Mainstay and Chairshot, but Mags, do you want to give us your details for your other projects, of which you have a few?
Okay. Firstly, go and follow me on my new Twitter handle, @PodfatherMags. Gonna start going by my work name now on the Twitter. But yeah, I'm involved in plenty of podcast projects. First of all, Radio Techers with Tanner and Matt Willis, where we talk about football, and that's proper football, not hand egg.
Yes.
Just it's been doing outstanding. Really kind of got a buzz going there. Chain wrestling with my boy Sa. Just such a fun show to do, where we go back and we watch one certain wrestling match that can be linked all the way back to the first episode via like the 6 degrees of separation style. Loads of fan listener interaction with that. So yeah, it's such a great time. And then a bit of a scoop for this podcast. After Ray and Carl's mini-series, which is absolutely outstanding, the 5 Tools Wrestler mini-series, I'll be bringing a new project back to the Badlands slot with Tanner and with Aura, where we'll be going and looking back at the Attitude Era from week to week, and kind of reviewing it with 2021 eyes, and also from 3 different kind of perspectives, because I watched all of the Attitude Era. I was a massive fan. Tanner was a channel swapper, so he got like both Raw and Nitro, so he was hot between those. And Ori got into wrestling just after the Attitude Era, so we've got 3 total different viewpoints from the Attitude Era, so hopefully it'll make for some interesting conversation.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to that, Mags, I have to say.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm not, because I enjoyed the slot that I took from him that he's stealing from me back.
I want it back.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited for you, man. So, I, myself, and of course you can find me at Ray and Clive. and of course when I tweet, it'll be with the R, right? While Clive tweets with the C.
You need to get that Twitter handle locked down.
Just in case.
Oh, in case Ricky really quits? I love you, Ricky. I could never fill your shoes, my brother. I'm at It's Ray Cash, REY as in Mysterio, CASH as in dollars, of course. Outsiders Edge with Carl and Kyle. Bandwagon Nerds with the Bandwagon Nerds crew, Tunny, Dave and Patrick. 3-Man Weave whenever we can get it with Tunny and Platt. Of course, Ray and Clive. And the Midweek Mainstay little head trauma with me and Mags, just a couple of British blokes talking the graphs. Because, I'm British because I'm from Scotland. So.
And don't forget, Harry is your Duke. Prince Harry is your Duke.
Prince Harry is my Duke, because he's the Duke of my Shire.
Yes, well done. Well done. Right, on that note, this has been the Rance and Clive Wrestling Show, part of the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where you can find other shows such as One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, Grown Men Watch This Shit, Great Match Generation, oh, for God's sake, Great Match Generator, Grave Consequences, 8-Bit Suplex Wrestling Podcast, and All Things Elite. You can give us a nice review on the podcast app of your choice. We're also at socialsuplex.com, where you can find the podcasts and all the columns that we do. In the show notes, you'll find links to our Pro Wrestling Tees page, where you can find some t-shirts, and a donation page where you can donate to either us, Rance and myself separately, or the network as a whole. We are at the Wrestling Square Circle on Facebook, and we are at, now I need to actually be genuine here, we're at the Ricky and Clive, at Ricky and Clive on Twitter, subject to change, card subject to change. I hope you've enjoyed this part one of our deep dive into the Four Horsewomen. It's been a very good talking point, and I think it's one that will probably be going on for many years to come. Mags, Rance, thank you very much for joining us, and as has been confirmed tonight, I'll see you next week.
Next year. I
meant to say see you here next week, but it came out a bit tongue-twisted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Does the British calendar, is this New Year for the British calendar? Because all y'all shit is different, right?
No.
Oh,
no.
I'm just checking. Is it like Australia where like the toilets flushed opposite way?
Oh, right, Mags, let's go before he embarrasses himself even further, eh?
He is a store brand Ricky. I will say that.
Oh.
No, nobody can fill the shoes of young Ricky.
You are the Aldi to his Waitrose.
Oh.
I don't get that reference, but I feel like I should be offended.
So like the dollar store to his Target.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I'm cool with that.
I
Have
shop
you
at
seen
Aldi.
the man?
I have. Not recently, but right, before we get into trouble, let's stop it. Right, thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you next week. Good night.
Thank you for listening to the Ricky and Clive Wrestling Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Lowe's has more of what trade pros like you need to get the job done. That means more delivery options, more convenient hours to fit your schedule, and more savings to fit your budget. More of the brands you trust the most. More of everything you need, all in one place. That's why, in the past year, more electricians, landscapers, painters, plumbers, and other pros helped make Lowe's the new home for trade pros. U.S. only.